So with the COVID, to respond to your question, we're still, of course, just as the state is trying to get our arms around exactly what the effects of the COVID are going to be financially. But of course, we're starting to see them already, and in fact, the timing, wasn't ideal for our communities who had to be adopting budgets right now when we know that there's a problem, but we don't really understand the full extent of the problem. I'm right now trying to gather information. I've had some discussions with some of the communities, and I'm seeing as folks forecasting as low as 14% and as high as 35% that they think their general funds will be hit by this. The Joint Appropriations Committee invited me to come give them a report on it next Tuesday, and so I've reached out to our members to try to pull together as much information as I can. So that information is just is coming in right now, and mostly what I'm hearing, everybody's trying to make their best forecast, and of course some of the organizations are a little more savvy at the forecasting than others, mostly what I'm hearing is here's our best estimate, here's our best guess at this time, but we don't really know just yet. And of course, as we're reopening, then of course, if the reopen goes well, and tourists start coming, and all those kind of things, we could recover quickly. But my guess is that we will come back, but there'll probably be a little bit of a lag. I'm guessing, for example, the tourists won't all come at once. And of course, we've got, what's going on with minerals right now, of course, isn't helping at all either. So kind of a double whammy for us. So I hope I haven't talked around the issue too much, but the bottom line is we've seen in our communities not only budget cuts for the adopted budget, which begins on July 1, but immediate cuts. And in fact, in some cases, in some examples, closing libraries, of course, swimming pools have been closed, which is kind of a reaction, not just financially, but, health-wise, but we're seeing things like libraries being closed. We're seeing furloughs of employees, and so it's times like these that you kind of follow Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You start with safety and security, and a community really goes through the same kind of a does when so I always use Maslow's hierarchy of needs when we're talking about putting budgets together. Long-winded answer. That'll teach you to ask me a question.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. Has there been money coming through the CARES Act to cities, towns, and counties, or not?
Well, just administratively, not yet. Of course, that the legislature. Okay. Of course, the legislature just met and kind of gave the 3 tranches to the governor, and I don't have to explain any of that to you. I'm sure you're following all that. But so the legislature has given the governor the authority to do that. The governor's working well with us. It's just a matter of that money's going to be coming through state lands and investments, and they've been in communications with us. They're working on what the process is. Of course, at the same time, we're working through what we think will qualify, and tracking those expenses, being ready for that. And we kind of expect any time now that that process will be in place, and we'll be able to begin to ask for those reimbursements. The biggest problem for us is not the state, but the federal guidance. Of course, the Congress passed the stimulus. Treasury has given they first initially gave, was it 2 or 3 page? I think 3 pages of guidance, and we thought we wanted more guidance, so they gave us more guidance. And the second round of guidance, which was 14 pages, as I recall, was no better. It was, in fact, in some cases worse. So we seem to be hemmed in pretty tightly, to reimbursement of costs. And so, and of course, the biggest problem is that our revenues are going away, and the federal guidance precludes, as you probably know, precludes reimbursement for lost revenue. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so we'll have some money. We'll be able to get through that. Our really our greatest hope, what would really be the most help, would be either some looser federal guidance, broader, I should say, uh, uh,
Mhm.
some broader guidance where we might be able to have a broader use of those funds. And of course, we also have high hopes that there'll be another round of the stimulus. What came out of the House, which but what came out of the House we liked in terms of what it would do for local government stimulus, because it would allow us to use it for more broadly. Of course, I don't have to tell you that the House packed it full of things that the Senate couldn't live with. So we recognize what's going on there, but we would hope that there be some sort of amended version that could come out of the Senate and maybe get it into conference and get something that we could, because again, the part of it that was the local stimulus, the House bill portion that was the local stimulus worked for us.
Now, you usually have a summer meeting. I assume that is all going to happen via Zoom and other engagements online. Are some of the bigger cities meeting online to talk about their issues that might differ from some of the smaller towns? How are they sharing information?
So we have, our summer conference is in June. And so, we had to cancel that, obviously. And we are meeting regularly by Zoom. Our board meets by Zoom. Our executive committee has met even with the county's Commissioners Association's executive committee by Zoom. We have another general meeting on Monday by Zoom to talk about these very issues, the stimulus and what can be used for. So, we are using Zoom. A lot of our communication has been, we've had a lot of one-way communication during the pandemic. We've had, we had questions about what are our emergency powers. And so we prepared a white paper and sent that out to our members. We had immediate questions about how do we meet how do we meet the open meetings guidelines, and not have more than 10 people in the same room. And so we worked closely with the governor's office and sent out some guidance on how they could do that and still take public comment and all that kind of thing. The legislature, of course, working through the same issues. So we've had just a number of issues like that where elections became an issue. We have some spring elections, in 15 of the communities have a spring election in even numbered years. So how do we, the question came to us, how do we do that? And again, we prepared a white paper and sent out guidance. And so we've been a resource like that to our members. But it is, and we have had a lot of communication electronically, even Zoom, but it's not the same. And I think our members are really looking forward to the day that they can look each other in the eyeball again and have those discussions.
Gosh, I hadn't even thought about the open meetings law and how difficult that would be to comply with during these times. The elections issue everybody's grappling with, but spring elections didn't give your communities much time to think it through. So my gosh, the unique challenges that maybe I and others have not thought about there are so many of them. Can you think of some others like that are just sort of big surprise issues that your average Wyoming person wouldn't think about dealing with?
Well, access to, the elections is probably the most, I don't know that I'd say it's the most complex, but it was the most interesting one because it was like, hey, we got elections coming right up. And those elections have passed
Yeah.
now. And for some of the communities, it wasn't that difficult because, we, in some of our communities that are 100 people, 25 people vote in the election. And so they
Mhm.
said, well,
Right.
we think we can handle that with with social distancing. And frankly, 25 people voting throughout the day. Usually, we don't usually have more than 2 or 3 here at a time anyway. So some of them were just able to proceed, but and none of the bigs, Casper and Cheyenne, Gillette, didn't have it. But Pinedale, I think, was the largest city that had that spring election, and that was an issue for them. And
Yeah.
uh, I think that even city hall access, what do we do about, you wouldn't think about this at all, but one of the immediate issues are, well, we've got, for example, water treatment plant operators. You have levels 1, 2, 3, and by law you have to have. I'm forgetting which level, but by law you have to have a certain one of those at the plant. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
and so one of the first things we said is if you've only got 2 of those, make sure that they stay away from each other. Don't put them on the same shift.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to lose all that at once, and because that would be kind of a disaster. So just city
Yes.
operations, that's probably the best example. But even city hall, how do we deal with customer? You know what I mean? How do we deal with people at the counter?
Mhm.
Because our front counters at city halls, especially water bill payments and stuff, they can be pretty busy. And how,
Sure.
how do we make sure that the public's still able to interact with us without and keep our employees safe? And it was kind of an adventure. And now we see city halls are uh, you know starting to get back to business as usual. And it'll be interesting to see. We're of course keeping our eye on it because as we open up, as as everybody's opening up, they're seeing some increases. We have the town of uh, Cody is an interesting example. They had one case. Park County had one case of COVID prior to Yellowstone opening back up. And of course, Yellowstone, the park's just open for day use at this point. So they're beginning to see, of course, they see an increase in hotel stays and stuff whenever the park's open. But in this case, people are having to leave the park at night, and so
Yes.
they're having a lot of people. So they're beginning to see a lot of people coming. I haven't seen any new numbers out of there yet, but they're bracing for it. After having only one case, they're really bracing for what may come, and they're well prepared for it. But they're
Good.
anticipating that they'll have you know that they'll begin to have problems now that they just haven't had when they
Yeah.
were, yeah, because when the park closed, they were kind of the end of the road, and now they're the gate,
Yes.
and now they're the gateway again. So
They are indeed.